All right, everybody, welcome to the 1016 Man. I'm your host, Marty Ellis, and I have an awesome guest today who, I've been thinking about this and planning this before I even got started. This is DJ Vanas. He's a member of the Odawa tribe of Michigan. He's an Air Force captain where he boxed. He's an internationally acclaimed speaker for Fortune 500 companies. He's an author of many books, one of which we're going to delve into here, called The Warrior Within. And he himself is an ogichidaa. Did I get that right?
You got it. Nailed it.
Yeah. All right. Which is warrior. And so DJ, welcome.
Thank you so much, Marty. Happy to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, as am I. I just remember I was filling in some potholes in my driveway about a year and a half ago. And I don't even remember how I stumbled upon this book, but I did. It was probably from another podcast, and I got to listening, and it probably took me 5 times as long as it needed to, because I'm taking notes, I'm pausing it. But man, I just found myself going, yes, 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 because the things you were saying were, are the things I hadn't thought about, or things that just delved deeper into what I believe my mission and purpose is, and what I'm doing here on the podcast. And then, so, and that just being, talking about warriors. And so, yeah, I'd love to get into that with you. But as I look through your book, I've got this for all you to see here. If you're watching on YouTube, this book is marked up. I have pages of notes. And so, yeah.
Well, I appreciate it. I mean, I poured my heart into the book. I'm glad it had an impact on you the way that it did. That was the whole purpose. So I laid out everything, 25 years distilled, into the book. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah. I mean, that's a passion project, I'm sure, for you. And I'm sure you get that. The listeners will get a sense of that heart and that journey that you have taken. So today, my mission would be that just to give the listeners and myself a better idea of how to walk alongside of our boys as we develop them into young men and bring them into manhood. And that manhood is fraught with trials, and whether it's psychological or physical, spiritual, all of those things, right? And so, how do we do that in a way that we are raising honorable servants in the way that they were, through their God-given talents and purposes, and you do a good job. And so, I think it'd be good to just kind of start out with what is, you'd bring up fighters and warriors and kind of distinguish the two. And
there's a difference. And I appreciate that, that insight that you're sharing, because I don't have a son of my own. I have 2 daughters.
Okay.
But I've worked, I've done youth work for over 25 years and continue to do that. I was just in Oklahoma working with Native students in 6 different schools across Cherokee Nation. So, but I think and we can get into that more, but I think it's incredibly important to set good examples. And we can talk about what that looks like, because the good examples I see now at this stage of my life were not necessarily the good examples I thought of when I was younger.
Sure.
I think those evolve over time, and we can get into that. But as far as the difference between being a fighter and a warrior, I think that's a great place to start, because a fighter, and they are very different. A fighter is somebody who uses their God-given talent, ability, and their effort and energy to accomplish a goal that primarily benefits them, so the individual. And whether this is, losing weight, leaving a bad relationship, accomplishing a personal goal that has a, personal benefit, and that can be, endless amount of things, or, endless identities. But as far as being a warrior, what that is taking those same ingredients and developing those so that we can become an asset or a benefit to the tribe that we serve. So how we impact someone else's life with our talent, ability, energy, and time. That's what makes a warrior a warrior. It's somebody who's a contributor, somebody who is a servant, somebody who fights for something bigger than their own personal welfare, who at the end of the day doesn't ask, what can I get, but what can I do for someone else? It's somebody who leads by example, somebody who is there, the whole role was centered around service. And, in my tribe, we say, a warrior is ogichidaa. And that term has nothing to do with what we see on TV and in movies. It's not that, Hollywood stereotypical image that we see so often. It's somebody who, yes, at times would fight and defend the people, of course, but was also a protector, a teacher, a mentor, a coach, if you will, in different terms. But that's basically what the role was. Somebody who developed, not only their body, their mind, their spirit, but also developed wisdom and gathered it wherever they could, not to hoard it, not to keep it to themselves or use it as a tool to, whack somebody in the head with it, but to share it so that everybody benefited. So that was the end of the book, is warriors never retire. They just evolve into elders. And then we're giving that information back so other people maybe have a little bit easier time than we did getting to the point in our life that we've gotten to.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that you went from the start to finish of your book real quick, right? Because the elder is, that's kind of the pinnacle, right? Your life's journey and your life's work, and then you're passing it on to others. And I love that. So as we start at the beginning of, so DJ Vanas, you are, you had a beginning. You had a time where you were a fighter and have developed that warrior spirit. So give us, the listeners and I, a little bit of a glimpse into your beginnings.
Sure. Yeah. My home community back in Michigan, we had a lot of the same issues we see too much of in our communities and in society in general. My family, we had unemployment, we had broken homes, we had drug and alcohol addiction, suicides, incarcerations, you name it, my family had it. My parents were teenagers in poverty when they had me. And so very turbulent beginning, really rough, very few resources, almost no support. And it was a struggle. And as I was growing up and I saw, my parents were very hardworking people. My dad was career military, my mom career nurse. Growing up to see somebody carve their pathway out, just, 1 inch, one grind at a time was inspiring to me. And I started thinking, how I wanted to transform my life and what I wanted to do with it. And I wanted to have a life of significance. I wanted to make an impact in the world. And what I looked at to do that was education. I poured my everything into developing that in my own life. And then, of course, got into leadership roles and sports and, tried to develop myself that way as well. But, I had a very strong motivation to take a different path, change the pattern. Even where I went to school in Gulf Coast of Mississippi, it was rugged. I mean, we were across the street from the largest projects development in the south half of the state.
Oh, wow.
And saw a lot of things that I wouldn't have wanted my daughters to see, in middle school. Violence, drugs. We had ambulances and police cars showing up constantly across the street from our school. And I've never claimed to be the brightest candle on the birthday cake, but I looked around at my life at that stage and I said, I don't know everything I want to do in my life, but I know I don't want to live like this. There's got to be a better way, a better path forward. And, I had good people in my life, and, my parents were, like I said, inspirational to me as far as seeing what a work ethic, what discipline can get you in this life, inspired me to do the same with, what God's given me to use in this world. And so I worked hard at developing that, and of course, at first, you're doing stuff in the classroom, you're trying to get good test scores, you're trying to do well on the athletic field or on the court. And that's for your benefit primarily. But as I got older, I wanted to take that education and do something with it in the world. And that's what I continue to do to this day. And I feel fulfilled because of it. I know I'm put here to serve. I know that's my calling, my path, and I feel blessed to be on it.
Yeah. And you certainly are giving back. I mean, as I said, when I read that, it's really gripping, as to, boots on the ground, moving forward, as you say, over and over again, one step at a time, or, you just keep swimming.
You get your butt handed to you more occasions than you will ever expect, but that's also part of the process. I mean, this, Marty, in your own life, and journey, we don't learn much when things are going well.
Mm.
We learn an awful lot when things go pear-shaped or fall apart. When we go through struggle, when we go through disappointment, pain, loss, heartbreak, get our teeth knocked out on the path that we've chosen to walk, we learn a lot. And those are the things that define us. I look back at my life, when you're young, you think you go through struggle and life's unfair and they're out to get you. And now that I'm at the stage I'm in my life, every one of those, I thank God for. They were blessed. I call them vicious blessings. They were the painful things that in the end made you better, made you stronger, sharper, more resilient, made you more aware of the world, made you more grateful for your blessings. And they're the things that, at times when we're going through it, we wouldn't wish those things on an enemy.
Right.
But as we go through them, and those are moments, frankly, through painful struggles, that in that moment, if we could have, we would have left that situation. Right.
Oh yeah.
But years later, after you see how it landed in your life and what it did for you, those are moments we wouldn't trade for the world.
Yeah.
They made us who we are.
So what do you think it is, because you talked about your family and, the unemployment, suicide, drugs, you struggle, all of these kind of things, and, real poverty. It sounds like you have family members that went a different way. What do you think it was that gripped you, that put you on that path?
I think I think it was a couple different things. I think I had, and I know I did, I had good people in my life. I had some really strong teachers. I had a handful that I will forever hold in a high spot in my life and in my heart. I just recently went back to Southern Mississippi, where I went to school, and got to revisit or reconnect to some of my former teachers. I did a program for the Biloxi Public Schools. It was huge. It was like, full circle moment. But I saw my old elementary school principal. I saw high school teachers, elementary school teachers. It was amazing. So I know I had good people in my life. I went out of my way as I got older. I didn't do this as much as when I was young, but started getting very selective with who I surrounded myself with. Choosing the right friends, choosing the right flock, the right tribe. Because, I look back now as that being a pretty wise move, because as an adult, we realize how impactful that is. We live up or down to the expectations of the people we surround ourselves with. And so I feel blessed that I got that figured out pretty early in life. Had some good coaches. I had, like I said, I had a strong motivation. That was something that I think was fueled through trying new things, exposure to different experiences, different opportunities. And that's one of the things I always tell youth, try new stuff. And I tell adults too, don't get stagnant. It's not, the journey gets less and less fun when we get more and more locked in. So try stuff that you haven't tried before. I got it on my list right now. I want to learn how to play pickleball. I'm still
nice.
Still chipping away and trying to learn as I go Spanish. It doesn't go fast, but just being involved with something that continues to push you and to bring out your good stuff. And what's cool when you try new stuff is you find what you love or what you like, what you don't like. And every once in a while you find what you love. So I had all that going for me as I was a kid as well. And I think that is a big part of what made the difference. And then being able to handle setbacks and disappointment. I think that's something that the sooner you learn that in life, the further you go, the more resilient we become. But there's no, the question isn't if that happens. The question is when it does, what are you going to lean on? Who are you going to lean on? And how are you going to handle yourself?
Yeah. And I love that you brought up you talked about the people that you surround yourself with. So what is that the importance of that? So we're raising our boys, our kids in general, right? Mm-hmm. We guide them to find good friends and, but they're going to be surrounded by, all kinds. How do we begin to help them cultivate this idea of selecting the right people or surrounding yourself with these?
Yeah, no, having the conversation about what makes a good friend, I think is critically important. My first book, The Tiny Warrior, I have a chapter in there that was one of the most popular in there called Choosing Your Pack.
Yeah.
And it was about the importance of surrounding yourself with the right people, the people who are supportive, the people also who aren't always the nicest, the ones who hold us accountable.
Yeah.
I think we've all got examples of that. The teacher, the parent, the coach, the pastor, the drill instructor who, at times drove us nuts, but in the process made us better. That's a very important part of who we surround ourselves with. My friends now, I mean, we hold each other accountable. We're competitive with each other, not at each other's expense, but in competition with each other so that we all rise,
Right.
and we encourage each other and occasionally kick each other in the rear end when we're slacking off. And, our buddies know when we're doing that. God, I wish I didn't have so many good friends when I was writing the last book, Marty. I'm writing it and grinding, and my buddies are like, how's it coming? I was like, I haven't written in the last couple of days. They're like, oh, you better get on it. It's not going to write. It's not going to write itself.
Yeah. Right.
Oh man. But we need those people.
Yeah. But you talk about somebody that stepped into your life at that time and who during the writing of, I think it was The Warrior Within, maybe it was a different book, but she, you said she kept calling you and calling you and calling you.
That was my first book.
Yeah, that was your first book.
Yeah. Dr. April Lee Goforth. I will never forget her. Cherokee woman, strong, and she held my feet to the fire. She asked me, it was my first book, and I was, probably, I don't know, I want to say maybe halfway through the manuscript, and, didn't have any idea on how I was going to get it published or printed or, what I was going to do. But I was scheduled to be with her. I think it was about 8 months from the time that we met, that her conference was going to be. And she said, we set it all up, and I was going to, go to her event. And she said, well, your book will be done by then, right? And I just remember saying the first thing that popped in my head. I said, yeah. And she followed up every couple of weeks. How's the book coming? Is it done yet? And man, I tell you what, you better be careful what you commit to, because you'll have people, if you're lucky enough, you'll have people that will hold you accountable to that.
Yeah.
And that's the best thing, because she pushed me and I got it done, and it got printed. And then 2 months later, it got picked up by a major publisher, and the rest is history, continues the story. But yeah, she made a big difference.
Yeah. That's
awesome. People like that. Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. I have a gentleman in my life who there were times I knew if I went to him what I would hear. And so I just avoided it, at that time.
So you answer the question yourself.
Yeah. Right. I mean, but it's good to have, like you said, good to have those people on you. The Bible says, iron sharpens iron. And a lot of times we use that as kind of this, iron sharpens iron, but we don't oftentimes live that out, right? Because like you're saying, it's not just, oh yeah, you're doing a good job. It's like, hey, where are you at? I thought you were doing this. You got to get to it. No, you're not holding true to your values or convictions here. You need to step up, and they challenge you on that. And that, like you said, that's what makes you grow.
Yeah. Not surrounding yourself with yes people who let you take the easy path all the time. I mean, we need supportive, kind people who love us up when we feel like we just got knocked down. We need that too.
Yeah.
But we want people who have initiative, who have discipline, who have goals themselves, who are engaged in their own life and career and relationships. We want that standard. And a lot of times when people don't choose like that, they want that easier path. So they surround themselves with people that, they're a little bit better than, they're a little bit sharper than. But you're absolutely, I mean, I love that quote, iron sharpens iron. And it's true, but we have to invite that iron into our circle.
Yes.
Iron doesn't sharpen by cotton balls. Sometimes we invite that because it feels good. It's easy, right?
Right.
To be with people like that. They hold us. There's no requirement for anything. There's no real initiative or goal. It's just kind of a hangout, talk about the weather kind of buddy. And, it just, I don't know. I think life's too short. I've got too much to do. And I think we all do. And you got to put yourself in that right zone. It matters.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. And, that brings me to, you brought up setbacks too. And because we're going to face trials, and you talk about that in the book. And so having those brothers are helpful in those moments too.
Hugely.
But that setbacks, that makes me, think a little bit about, what it takes to overcome those setbacks. Right. Because there comes an element of fear, I think, in those times. which is asking for courage. And so do you want to speak on that a little bit, like that fear and courage and dealing with setbacks and the importance of those moments in our life?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and you're right, Marty. It's not a question of if, it's when it happens. We're all going to experience it. I mean, if we're whatever we're trying to do, that's part of the mix.
Yeah.
But dealing with setbacks, the initial blow is to our emotion, to our ego, a lot of times,
Mm.
and sometimes that's where it stops for people, and they get locked in. They get this idea of woe is me, or they're embarrassed or ashamed. They start catastrophizing. It always goes like this. It'll never work. And that's where, ego is so wounded that, we don't find a way forward. That those setbacks are going to happen. It's okay. But we need to sit there. We need to process the emotions that we're going through and know that it's normal and it's okay. And then start having that internal conversation, like, what can I do now? What do I do next? Also having that support in our environment is critical during those times. And one of the funny things, and this is an internal battle I think we all go through, especially as men, is when we're struggling, when we're, kind of out of our depth, or we're, something fell apart and we're struggling, those are the times where we most need other people. I was taught by my elders, we're a lot more like bees and ants than we are like eagles. We need each other. We're social creatures by design. God made us this way. We're neurologically hardwired for connection.
Yes.
So we need people in those moments. But that moment of struggle, that moment of pain, is also the most likely moment that we withdraw into ourselves. So there's an internal battle that goes on within us, especially, like I said, as guys, that we need to recognize before we get to that battlefield, that it's going to happen. It's okay. It's normal. But, we need people at that moment, but we need to get out of our own way to access those folks. And that comes back to, normalizing struggle, to say, it's okay. This happens to everybody. You're not special in that regard, but how we handle it is going to be, that's what reveals our character. And pushing ourselves to connect with our friends, and those rope holders, as my buddy Dr. Kevin Basic calls them, keep us stable, keep us moving forward when we feel like we've gotten knocked down.
Yeah, 100%. And I think sometimes it's hard. You talked about the when we get to those setbacks, we're wired prior to that, right, to be in company, to be in brotherhood, and we need those people during those setbacks. But there aren't, psychologically, when we get to those places that presses up against us, we withdraw. And so you talked about keeping the fires lit, and that kind of, it reminds me of that, because in there you talk about what can we do to fortify that or be ready when those moments come. Yeah. And so, yeah, can you talk a little bit about that, keeping that fire lit, and so that we're ready when those moments come?
Yeah. It's preparing for the storm that we know is going to happen. It's, once that storm shows up, then what will be revealed is how much work we did on ourselves, our mentality, our spirituality, our connections and relationships. That's when it will be revealed. I mean, going through the pandemic these last 3 years, I mean, that was a real case study on who prepared, before, like the big bad wolf, showing up, where, what kind of house did you build, little piggy?
Yeah.
Did you build it out of straw or bricks? And the thing is, as we go through life, when we go through these setbacks, we realize maybe should have done more work on myself. Maybe I should have had a better mentality. Maybe I should have done things to keep myself more motivated, or physically healthy, or mentally clear. Maybe I should have invested a little bit more time in my relationships, my friendships, my support team. Those things get revealed when we go through the storm. We see where the leaks are in our roof. And so every time we go through something like that, we get another chance to reset, reboot, and kind of get back to what we know we need for ourselves to move forward in a strong way. And keeping our fires lit is not automatic. You know, a big part of that has to do with how we motivate ourselves. Motivation is not automatic. I don't care what career field you're in, how much you love the people you're with, you know, how much you believe in your mission and your purpose. If you keep drawing from your well over and over again without putting anything back to replenish it, I don't care how strong you are physically, mentally, spiritually, or emotionally, you are going to run dry. It is only a matter of time. So we have got to do things that are good for ourselves, that are healthy, that are, you know, medicinal. And I mean that in a traditional sense, you know, like we call medicine mushkeke in my tribe, which comes from two words. Mushke means strength that you gather, and ke means earth. Strength that you gather from the earth. And everything and anything can qualify as medicine as long as it keeps us strong and healthy, mind, body, and spirit. It can be our friends, our workout routine, the books we read, how much sleep we get, taking a vacation, taking time off, reading, pursuing a hobby, spending time outdoors. Anything can qualify as long as it meets that criteria. And the other part that's different about medicine in our tribal communities is medicine isn't something we wait to seek out once we're out of balance and sick. It's something we incorporate into our life daily to keep us strong. And so doing those things keep that fire burning bright. And we need that because we live in a hard world. Man, there's knuckleheads out there. There's division everywhere. Everything is, you know, a flashpoint for emotion. Everybody is just running around, and it's a hard thing to deal with if you're not going out of your way to put good stuff in your life. We can get out of balance really quick. So go out of your way to do that stuff. Motivation is something we have to do on purpose with purpose. But when we do that, make that investment of time to do those things, those activities, those pursuits that keep us in that space, everything we do is better. We're more patient, we're more kind, we're more likely to find solutions to our challenges. And, you know, we're a lot more resilient, and we're a better friend, better partner. You know, it's like, it's just a win-win-win across the board.
Yeah. And how is discipline different than motivation?
Yeah, discipline is usually it gets a bad rap, though. I mean, let's be honest. When
100%.
we say discipline, people cringe about it because discipline a lot of times was something that was done to us as we were growing up. So it has a negative connotation to it. It was usually punitive, right? Being yelled at, being, you know, you got to run laps, or, you know, you get grounded, whatever. That was what discipline was seen, you know, we're growing up. So sometimes it leaves a bad taste in our mouth. But discipline is the thing that allows us to capture our God-given talent and ability and translate it into an impact. And that's the thing that is so powerful about discipline is this is your key to freedom in this life. It's not a restrictor. It's not a, you know, a limiter. This is what grants you freedom to become the best version of yourself, because you can have talent and ability. I see this all the time. You probably have too. People who are naturally talented and have incredible gifts that were innate, that were given to them at birth, and they don't do a thing with them.
Yes.
They don't practice, they don't train, they don't develop, they don't go out of their way to ask questions. They're not coachable. They don't want to be coached, you know, and what good is it? You know, discipline is that thing that when we put it into that space, it allows us to, you know, increase our horsepower tremendously. I mean, I always look at discipline as, you know, dinner before dessert. The definition I carry is, you know, doing the thing that you don't want to do when you're supposed to do it, even when you don't feel like it. And we got to think long-term about this, you know, doing stuff that is a little bit tough now that pays off later is a much better calculus to run your life with than doing the thing that feels good now and you pay for it later. You know, when we can flip that dynamic over, we are cooking with gas, you know? And then the other way to look at discipline, it's kind of like a fire on a beach is nice. You know, you can sit around, sing songs and dance around it. And it's nice. Throws a nice light, warms you up. It's great. But if you contain that fire inside of a locomotive, you can get 100 fully loaded cars down the track. You know, that's the difference with having natural abilities, which we all have. You know, Stephen King said, talent's cheaper than table salt. What does that mean? That it's not valuable? No, it is. But what you do with it is up to us. That's the choice we get to make. And that comes from discipline. It's having structure, it's having a routine, it's training, it's practicing. And I don't care how good you are at what you do, we all have room to grow. And there is no upper limit to how good we can be at who we are and what we can do in this world. The only limiting factor is us.
Yeah.
But discipline matters in that regard.
Yeah. So it sounds like motivation is something that you can be fueling, that you can be working on to keep yourself engaged and feeling that, yeah, I'm ready to go. But discipline takes you places where motivation can't, or where motivation is gone.
Yeah, this is a great point. Motivation is the way that we feel about something. It's the reason why we do the things that we do, right? I mean, you shrink motivation down to the root word, you got motive. So what is your why? What is your reason to do what you do? So motivation is more of a thought process. Discipline is the action behind it. We can be fired up about doing whatever. I've been fired up a lot of times in my life, starting a business, joining the military, getting into the Air Force Academy, writing my first book, whatever it may be. And you get fired up about that stuff, right? And then the reality sinks in, and and then all of a sudden, you have to put action behind the words. It's not what do you feel in your mind that you want to do, or what you think would be really cool to pursue. It's what actions are you willing to take to breathe life into that idea?
Yeah.
And that's our discipline. That's the actions we take.
Yeah, that's good. And so now I'm going to kind of bring four things together to, and see where you're at on this. So the idea of a war cry. Mm-hmm. So I'm seeing, so we've got this motivation that may lose its flame, and that we can pick up with that discipline. And I see those moments where we're fearful and courage picks up, right? Because we can't have courage, right, with the absence of fear.
That's it.
Correct?
Yes.
Yes. So getting between those two things, there has to be some action move, and that, you're one step more. Is that where a war cry can bridge that gap?
Yes, it's the booster that we need. It's the way that we talk to ourselves when we're facing fear, when we're facing something that's difficult, a hard choice, something that scares us. It's that war cry. And the way I explain it in the book is, traditionally with our tribes, our warriors had a war cry that they would do for two reasons. Number one, it was to scare the you-know-what out of the enemy before the fight even started. That was the first thing. It was psychological warfare. The second reason why it was done is to boost that warrior up who's yelling the war cry. It kicks our adrenaline in. It gets us in this mode of, we're engaged, we're ready for this fight. And we need that at times, because there's infinite moments that we deal with that in our own life and career. And sometimes there's nobody around to encourage us. We need to be able to do that for ourselves. And so a war cry can be, it doesn't have to be, as I say in the book, it doesn't have to be a full-throated, wild yell. In a work environment, that's probably not appropriate. Your coworkers are probably not going to appreciate that.
Right.
But it doesn't have to be just that form. It can be a mantra. It could be a prayer. It could be a quote. It could be something that a touchstone. It could be something that you hold in your hand and you kind of, touch when you want that feeling. But we need that little boost that moves us forward to take action. That's why, I write about that in the book, and why that's so important is, one of mine is, I will find a way forward. Being able to say that whether I'm on my hands and knees crying, at my, heart broke, or your teeth kicked in, find a way. I will find a way forward. And it's a commitment I make to myself. It's to keep myself in integrity as I move forward, regardless of what happens outside of me. This is something that I can control. That's me operating from my agency, is being able to say that and mean it, and find a way to make it a reality.
Yeah.
We need that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. At the end of my podcast, I leave the guests with kind of my mantra, which is, don't stand idly by. So we've got all these things, like you had noticed a way that you could take your God-given talents, become a fighter, and develop those for yourself. And then you could go take those talents and those places you've been to now give to others.
Yeah.
Right.
Teach other people to do it.
Teach other people to do it. Right. And that's kind of that's why I'm doing this is I found myself looking back at where I had been, and I kind of use and maybe I shared this with you when I was messaging back and forth, but I use a story of King David, where he started off as a shepherd, and so he's shepherding his sheep, and later on, and I'll just shrink it all down, but we start to find out what was being developed by God in that moment when his dad says, "Hey, bring food up to the front lines to your brothers." And so the Israelites and Palestinians, they're getting ready to fight, and Goliath is down there. We know the story of David and Goliath. Well, David looks down and he's like, "Well, why are we just standing here?" He says, I'll go fight these guys." And they're like, yeah, kind of look at him like, "Yeah, you're just a scrawny little kid. Get out of here." And he's like, "Well, I've fought off bears and lions with my bare hands." Yeah. And so to me, that was a moment where he said, like, and you would say fighter, and I'm just saying, I'm using shepherd, right? It's that experience and that developed skill and those God-given talents.
Yes.
Prepared him to step in and fight for other people and he had those tools because
that was his transition.
That was his transition.
Being a fighter and being a warrior. He had trained, he had fought bears and, fought them off by himself to benefit himself, save his own life. But now he's able to use those skills and impact somebody else.
Right.
Take care of somebody else. So yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah. And so like you, I come from a place that is, fraught with suicide and drug abuse and struggles and poverty. And, and I really know that God he's taken me through these places, and we are all taken through these places, but I don't think everybody looks back and says, okay, what was being developed in those moments? And now what do I do? What void can I step into and fill for others? And this is part of that for me.
This is a great illuminator for going forward here with this conversation, because that's something that's so important, is to do what you said, is to look back at those moments and say, what was I supposed to get out of this? Who was I in this moment? What new version of me showed up there? And because when we do that consciously, we're able to put that stuff away for the future. I call it building a courage reservoir. I wrote an article about this in Men's Journal magazine that it highlights why it's so important to log those moments of bravery and when we exercise courage in our life. And we've got so many moments, and we completely discount most of them.
Sure.
Because we go through something hard, we kind of stumble through it and go, "Oh, thank God that's over." And we go off to the next thing. And what I ask people to do is don't do that anymore. When you go through that hard thing, the scary thing, the difficulty, take a moment and reflect on what it took for you to rise up to that moment. Journal about it. Talk with friends about it. Do something to log it in your memory banks, because when you do that, you store it away. And then the next time you deal with that hard, difficult, scary thing, you can look down at your courage, your reservoir of courage, and say, "You know what? I know what this looks like. I know what this feels like. I've been here before, and I know how to respond." And then you can look at, and faith is an important part of, our strength in this world. But it's great to base our courage not just on faith, but to base it on hard evidence. And when we look back at those moments and we see what we have done to get to this point, the times where we brought it, where we did the difficult thing, where we showed bravery, we exercised courage, that we can look at that hard thing eye to eye and say, "You know what? I got this." And we can say it with great confidence and know that we're not blowing sunshine our way, but we mean it because we've proven it. That's why that's so important.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I see that for sure. Yeah, I mean because faith, you still have to move forward, right? I see a lot of people making that, "I'm just waiting to hear a voice. I'm waiting to be directed." And, it's kind of like that rudderless ship, right? You can turn that wheel all you want. Yeah. But that ship was not going to move unless it has some forward propulsion, right? That's that move, a little bit of move forward. And then you go, "Oh, yeah, okay." And it actually takes a lot of faith to move forward.
You're right, especially when you can't see ahead of what it looks like, and it looks dark and scary. But faith isn't waiting for a sign. Faith is doing the work and then realizing that you are able to do it,
Yeah.
and kind of go into it with that mentality. I mean, that's faith is practiced. It's got to be practiced. It can't be, sometimes that dynamic gets twisted where people sit back and go, I'll have faith if you show me that this is the right path to take. It's like,
yes.
no, that's not how it works.
Right.
Faith is believing in your heart going, you know what? I feel this at a core level that this is what I'm meant to do. And I'm going to have faith that that assessment is correct. And you go forward, and it's amazing to see when you feel that way, the results that you get. Doors open up that you didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
And in that old adage of you take a step forward, the universe takes a step towards you. That's how it is. We can't sit back and wait for that stuff to come to us. We have to move forward and meet it halfway.
Yeah. And a closed door is an opportunity to go down another one. Right. But you don't even approach that. You don't even get an opportunity to realize that, nope, that's not the way unless you go forward.
And the crazy part is sometimes those shut doors, Marty, are the best blessings we ever get.
100%. Yeah.
But we will complain and cry about it to the heavens, and, lament about it, ad infinitum. But, I look back at one of the doors that closed for me when I was at the Air Force Academy. I wanted to be a pilot. I wanted to be a fighter pilot. And I flew all through high school. I started flying when I was 13, soloed when I was 16, had my pilot's license at 17. I knew how to fly an airplane really well before I ever got my driver's license.
Wow.
Which is scary. I had to be driven to the airport to be dropped off to rent, to fly a plane I could fly on my own because I didn't have a driver's license. But, so that was my whole goal. That was my motivation. That was my focus. And I get to the academy and I get my follow-up physical. And this is the second week of basic training. I was going to be there for 4 years, In the second week, they did the follow-up eye exam and they said, you're not going to be a pilot. You are not waiverable. This is not in your future. Oh. And I sat out in the stairwell with my shaved head and cried for 2 hours. And, I just sat there. I was so miserable. I was so devastated because I had put years of focus and work into this dream. And now it was like a balloon being popped after spending 4 years blowing it up.
Yeah.
And, I finally got to a point where, I kind of wiped the tears out of my eyes and went back to my squadron. And, I'd already been making really good friends. And I started trying to count my blessings. I said, well, that's gone. But, I am here on a full ride scholarship, which if you get into one of the military academies, that's what you're on. I'm at a great institution. I'm already making really good friends. Let's see how this plays out. And plus, I don't want to go home right now because my head's shaved. And I look like a squirrel monkey. So I'll at least wait till my hair grows out, And but the thing is, I look back on that now, and if I would have been a pilot, I don't think I'd be doing this work. Or at least I wouldn't be where I am right now doing this work because I probably would have stayed in for a career.
Yeah.
But things happen. You look over your shoulder and you're like, thanks God. Appreciate you.
100%.
Like didn't know it at the time. And I complained about it and I was angry with you, but I look back on that stuff now and I feel nothing but gratitude that played out the way that it did.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's a few things in this that came up for me. And the first one is identity. And I see it creating a lot of havoc in the lives of boys and men and young men alike. And that moment where you could have placed your identity, and I don't know how much of your identity was wrapped up in being a pilot at that time. I mean, from a young age and working through there, and that is, you put a lot of eggs in that basket.
I did.
And
I really did.
And we see that a lot right now with athletics, especially, with these very select, very focus driven young kids towards a single aim. And to me, I look at that and it's not always the truth, right? I mean, as parents, we can shore up that foundation, but to a certain extent, if we're building on that one thing, that can be taken away from us. I mean, that's kind of like building on sand, right? Because and you came up against it. So how much at that time, how much of your identity do you think was wrapped up in that? And just speak a little bit on identity, the strengths of it and the pitfalls. And
a lot more of my identity was wrapped up in that than I wish that it would have been, because when that got taken away, it was devastating, and I questioned everything, even myself. And the thing is, especially, like what you're saying is going for athletics. There's a limited amount of slots for those people who are going to go to play college football or play professional basketball or whatever. And people will put all their eggs in that basket, and they will go for it 100%, do everything that they can do to create that opportunity or to seize that opportunity. And it doesn't work out. And it can be devastating. But the thing that we have to remember, and I wish I would have been able to talk to my 17-year-old version of myself then, is to I would have reminded myself, you are more than that. You are more than being a pilot. You are more than, that identity. You are more than that, that top high school athlete. You are more than that. We have so many facets to who we are as human beings, our spirit, our emotion, our capabilities, that we have no clue what that looks like, but we will wrap ourselves into that one role. We put all our eggs in that basket. And when it doesn't work, this can be devastating. Youth, sometimes will go off the deep end when that gets taken away, because they feel life is over. They feel like they're so disappointed, and they start beating themselves up. They're not good enough. It just gets really toxic when we do that. And I'm lucky that I was in the environment I was in, because like I said, basic training, anybody who's been through it, you start being fused with people very quickly from day one, because when you go through common struggle, you bond with people next to you in ways that are hard to replicate. So I already was in an environment where I knew I could go back and kind of, share what just happened and have support. But yeah, it's tough when we do that. We put ourselves at great risk for discounting everything else about us that makes us beautiful and powerful and capable, when we wrap ourselves into a singular identity.
Yeah. I had heard about it, and I don't know the background, the details of it, but it just got me thinking about it. There's an organization around here that had a couple kids in this organization, an athletic organization, that had killed themselves at 18 or 19 ish. And again, I don't know what surrounded that. I don't know of the instability, the emotional instability beforehand, what was going on. But I think that both of them did not make it to the next level.
Yeah.
To me, it tugs at my heart, and worries me for these kids growing up. And I'm raising kids, and I want to teach them, to be competitive, to seek those high heights. Right.
Yes.
But I also think and I love it, because you put it in your book where you talk about that effort is the success.
Yeah.
And John Wooden, who John Wooden,
legend. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, that was his pyramid of success. And he talks about effort is success. He says it a little bit more eloquent than I did, but
yeah, but and I agree. I mean, especially as I've gotten older, I see the world and my life like that so much more now than I used to when I was younger. But we can't have an all or nothing, type of ideology when it comes to our goals, because like you said, that can lead to very dark outcomes.
Yeah.
When you say my life is over at 18. I did not reach the threshold to make it to the next level of my, athletic development, and I'm not going to get that opportunity. My life is over. That is that is such a short-sighted, toxic view of self. It's like, be competitive, put your all into what you're doing. But if it doesn't work out, sometimes you just have to understand that's life. But think about all the work that person did, that young person did, to become that type of athlete. Is there any benefit to that they could transport to something else in their life? Absolutely. They could put that same discipline, focus, commitment, that coachability into any other direction. But that's the thing, is they have to find out what that's going to look like now, and they're capable of it. But this idea of it's either this or it's nothing at all. That is just such a really shallow way to look at your life's journey, because you have no idea what the future holds. You have no idea what you're capable of, what possibilities there are. Nobody can know, not even ourselves, of what our life could lead to or what we could do in this world. And that's what I would say to those young people who struggle with this is yes, be competitive, go for it. But if it doesn't work out, there's a different plan for you, and you're going to have to figure out what that is. And it may be 1,000 times better than the one that you just had to say no to.
Yes. Right. And it developed that fighter to now go be a warrior.
That's it.
For other people. Yeah. And to me, it also talks about the necessity for elders in your life, people who have been through that, right? Who have met those walls, who have met those moments where it seemed like a failure, or they were told no, or, hey, this is the end for you. Because, I mean, let's face it, there comes an end to our ability to live at that same level. Right.
Because you have to transition at some point.
So those elders, that's a good time for them to step in and say, right, hey, just, really just reiterate what you just said.
Every ending is a new beginning.
Yeah.
That's it. Until we draw our last breath, and that end is also a new beginning. But it's like that at every stage of our journey. When things, when one thing is ending, something else is ready to emerge. And we have to figure out what that is. Not everything is going to go according to plan, but it seldom ever means disaster. At least temporarily, it might feel that way, but it usually is not something that we can't recover from, we can't grow from, we can't benefit from even. We just don't see it that way, in the moment. I'm glad I sat out in the stairwell and cried my eyes out for 2 hours. I think that was so cathartic. I look back at that now as like a really wise decision. And I could have got in deep trouble being away from my squadron from that long, because we're all being yelled at and running around. Where's Vanas? Luckily nobody was looking for me because I was at a medical appointment. But I'm glad I did that, because I got that out of my system and, wiped my eyes and wiped my nose and got back to living my life and trying to figure out what the next chapter was going to look like. But sometimes we have to do that. We have to feel those feelings, and they feel awful.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be disappointment or have their heart broken, but it's bound to happen at some point, and how we respond is who we are.
Yeah. And you mentioned something, was it a tear wiping ceremony?
Yeah.
Is that
the tears ceremony?
A wiping of the tears? And can you explain that more? I mean, I think I have the idea of it, but.
Yeah. It's a traditional ceremony that's done to help people move past their pain. So I had one of those ceremonies with an elder named Earl Michigan, who lives in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. He's a Potawatomi tribe, which is kin to my tribe, which is Odawa. So Ottawas, Ojibways, and Potawatomis were known as the three keepers of the fire. So we were all kind of related and, allies. But it's a ceremony to basically release the pain that we carry after a loss, after a heartbreak, after something goes horribly wrong in our life that we didn't predict. And it allows us to kind of let that stuff out, because our elders and our ancestors understood this concept very well. And we're coming back to it now in modern science and behavioral science, is emotions go somewhere. They don't just disappear. They don't evaporate like, water on a hood of a car. They go somewhere, and usually they get internalized and they get stored away. And it can cause toxic, not only behavior, but mentalities. It can lead to a lot of dark outcomes. And so that wiping of the tears ceremony is to bring all that stuff up so you can release it so that you can move forward with your life without carrying that burden with you.
Yeah.
That was the purpose of it. It was for healing.
Yeah. Yeah. Ceremonies play a huge role in your tribe. Is that correct?
All tribes. Yeah.
And all tribes. And it should really play a big role in our society. Can you, and I would love to know more about the importance of them and maybe just a few different ceremonies that you do, because I think that they seem like moments where you're intentionally stepping into somebody's life or as a group, to get past something or to put a stamp on something.
Yeah, it's to honor stages of our life. It's to honor, elements of our life, whether that be our spiritual growth, whether it be direction, whether it be family and community. Ceremonies were done for different purposes, but they were to highlight and honor one of those sacred ingredients that make the human journey what it is. A lot of our ceremonies were done in a context of going without. So, like for instance, going through Vision Quest, which is ogichidaa, to cry for a vision. You don't know why they call it that until you go out on one. So 4 days, 4 nights, no food, no water, no shelter. And your point was to simply pray for direction. That was it. And to let that be revealed to you during the time that you're out there. And you suffer. You go without. And people always ask, well, why are these ceremonies so hard? Well, the reason why is because a lot of times we're living a pretty comfortable life and we don't think differently until we're challenged. And so going without those things, it was always an exchange in ceremonies. So going without food, going without water, without shelter. Yeah, those are sacrifices you make, but what do you get in return? Well, you get growth, you get insight, you get wisdom, you get self-knowledge, you get gratitude. It's a trade-off that you're making when you do these things. But the ceremonies were, like for instance, rites of passage. That's another one that, a lot of tribes still practice where, the point where a young man or a boy becomes a young man or a girl becomes a young woman. These rites of passage are special. They're ceremonial, and they highlight this transition in a healthy way, in a positive way. And when we don't have these rites of transition, and most of society doesn't, well, let me redact that. They do, but it comes in a different form. Yeah. It's the first time they have a drink. It's the first time they have a cigarette, the first time they have sex, the first time, there's rites of passage, but they're not necessarily the ones that we would want for our kids, to cross that threshold and be seen in a different light. But that's the thing, is we're all trying to prove that. We're all trying to show that we're grown up, that we have transitioned. And so that's one of the things in our tribal communities that I think is still not only special, but needed, to be able to guide kids to becoming adults in a healthy, positive way.
Yeah. Yeah. My son and my oldest son just turned 13 this month, and we began a rites of passage into manhood for him. And so I've been, trying to take in all I can to find what is the most important and will hold the most value for him moving forward. Obviously when he's 14, he's not going to be fully a man, right?
Right.
But I'm hoping that that he's finding that we're being intentional, that we are, pointing out the things that are, that I believe are key to our foundation of manhood.
Yeah. And it's important to identify that, to highlight that. And it's the next step. It's like he's not fully a man yet, but he's leveling up. Right? Yeah. Just like it's like in a video game, we were talking about characters. We just leveled up, and it's an important transition to identify. One of the things, and even if it's not a ceremony per se, or a retreat or something along those lines, it could still be done through the context of conversation, of, having kind of a new set of expectations, because what we expect of our kids at 11 is different than what we expect of them at 15. Yeah. And it should be, that's growth, that's maturity. That's taking a different path and going up that mountain of our life. So, but it is important to do that, because left to our own devices, we figure it out on our own. And a lot of times, like I said, it doesn't come with good consequences.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
but it's a natural human need, to be able to
Yeah.
find that transition.
Yeah. And that the vision quest that you talk about is really intriguing to me and something that I would love to incorporate um, into this rites of passage. But I have never, I didn't go through a rites of passage. I didn't, go through a vision quest. Um, so I just don't have a lot in the way of, um, knowing what to do for a vision quest and, what would be appropriate for him at 13.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be 4 days, 4 nights. It could be a retreat in the backyard.
Sure.
Let's go out there. No tech, no food, maybe just water. We want to keep them hydrated. But, when we do the ceremonies, they're done under great supervision by elders who know what they're doing. I mean, all the ceremonies I've been in, some have risk involved, going through the piercing ceremony and Sundance. If you don't do stuff like that right, there's, bad things can happen. And the same with the vision quest. So but it could be something a lot simpler, a lot less dangerous, and take on a different form. But the other thing too is, even if you haven't done that, as a traditional one, we've all had rites of passage, in our life, we look back on it, going through leaving home and going to basic training, going to the Air Force Academy. That was a rite of passage. Going through we can all look at our lives as different turning points. But yeah, being able to do it with intentionality, that's powerful too, especially being able to do it with our kids even more so.
Yeah. Yeah. And hard work is and having those challenges or something put in our life, I think is super important especially right now in our culture. Cause it just, and I'm guilty of it as a parent too. I want, there to be somewhat of an ease to my kids' life, but I also want them to learn some of those, responsibility and, thoughtfulness and resourcefulness and accountability, all of those things. So I have to almost manufacture ways to do that, whether it's through chores or, just, trying to make their life a little bit harder. Yeah.
And that's important. I mean, that does teach discipline. It teaches responsibility, accountability. Sometimes we have to put that, because we do live comfortable lives now. We don't live like we did, 1,000 years ago. We don't even live like we lived 75 years ago. Life is dramatically different now. It's a lot easier. The challenges are a lot different. They're a lot more, mentality, and emotional. Not so much don't get eaten by a bear, grow enough food so you don't die through the winter. It's a different challenge, but at the same point, we're trying to balance that for our kids. We want to make sure that they're comfortable and they're healthy and they're having their needs met, but we also don't want to make life easy, a cakewalk, because that doesn't exist except maybe in the environment we create. But we know the world doesn't work that way. Life doesn't work that way. We have to earn what we get. We have to work for stuff that we want to see. So it's trying to balance that. And that's always a tough thing, but especially as a parent, that's definitely a battle worth fighting. It's never easy, but it's definitely worth exploring. It is, making it good for them, but not making it easy, and not making it overly harsh or punitive. And when we do have discipline, make sure that we're doing it as lovingly as we can, that we're not doing it in a harsh, sharp way that leaves a mark, because we can get a response. I mean, we've all probably experienced this as kids too, where you get, you respond, but it leaves a mark emotionally on you when we do it that way. So we want to be aware of that.
Yeah. I try to remind myself, that the root of discipline is disciple, and really we're just guiding and teaching our kids. But emotionally it goes to that direction of punitive, because at that moment I'm either frustrated or wanting to change behavior in that moment without regard for the future and what I'm actually teaching them.
Yeah. And that's the tough part, is trying not to let our emotions run the show.
Yeah.
And those are natural feelings. Our kids can, we love our kids to death. We'd kill or die for them, but they drive us nuts at times, and that's part of the mix as well. But we have to, take a beat, and it's just like, the old quote, measure twice, cut once, is especially important when we're delivering a message, because we can let our emotions color the comment, and we say something in a moment that we regret for a week, or that leaves a mark that our kid remembers. They don't even remember the incident. They just remember how that felt in that moment, and it didn't feel good. So we have to be, we have to do what we can to temper that, to take a beat, take a breath. If we're really hyped up, take a walk, but not unleashing that on the next person that walks in the room, especially if it's our kids.
Yeah. Yeah. And we should be cognizant of the fact that they are young, and that they have, that their capacity for certain things, or certain emotional control, is just, they're not quite ready for. And so we have to meet them at that level. Right.
Right. And we have to be a good example for them on how to handle our emotions, because there's times where, I got taught the lesson, growing up, that anger was okay anytime. And that was something that I'm trying to change in the way that I parent, because, we're supposed to progress through the years. We're supposed to evolve and take what worked and use that, and make adjustments to the things that we didn't feel like were as effective. But really at the end of the day, that discipline part, I think, goes down a lot better with a spoonful of sugar, meaning that they do the work, but they get rewarded through feedback. Is when we can highlight with our kids to say, look what you did there. That was awesome. Look, when we talked, you didn't know that you could do this, and look what you've been able to do, and be able to build on those strengths, catch them doing the right thing, calling it out, giving them honor, giving them that positive feedback, because that's the thing that's going to bring them to the next thing and the next thing. Even if they're complaining and whining about it, which, we've all done that, even when we were kids, but they do it. And then when they feel that reward, what you're doing is you're conditioning them to move to take the next hill, and then the next hill. And the most beautiful part, that I think the highest goal we can reach as a parent, is when our kids get to the point where they are practicing self-discipline. That they know the benefits of it because they've seen it, and they know how it lands in their life and what it takes to get stuff done.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate goal.
Yeah. So if 80% of the time they're not doing what you're expecting them to do, just wait for that 20% and acknowledge it, and
jump on it. Yeah.
Jump on it. Right.
Pour fuel on that fire.
Exactly. Right. Because that 20% will turn to 30%, will turn to 50 to 60. Right. And then
that's it.
And you never had to get on them.
Yeah. And then the next thing you know, they're capped out, and they're ready to level up on their own and be able to operate under their own agency.
Yeah.
And make their own decisions. That's growth. I mean, that's what we all, I think, would want for our kids, to be able to operate under their own steam and go for what they want in life and actually get it.
Yeah. And you had a really awesome quote in here. And I wrote it down because I didn't want to butcher, but, and I think it was a friend of yours who wrote it, and it was, pray like it's in God's hand, but work like it's in yours.
Yeah.
I liked that, around work, because, I mean, again, and that touches on that faith versus our, our steps, right?
Yeah. Faith is practiced. Yeah. It's not sitting back and going, God, give me some stuff. It's like, work, put the work into it. Know that God's got your back. You're in God's hands anyway, but work and see what can be done. And, when you meet in the middle and you get that result, it feels a lot different. It feels awesome, but we don't want to sit back in the shadows and wait for things to drop out of the sky. I had an elder tell me this years ago. He said, I don't know why people live their lives that way. Only 4 things are going to come from there: rain, snow, hail, and bird doo-doo. Pick which one you want. It's not going to be your goals. It's not going to be your dreams. We have to hustle and grind for those. We have to earn them.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, it's been so good. You've laid out for me and my listeners, you touched on a lot of stuff in your book and a lot of things that we can be guiding and directing our boys to, our kids to, and you said if boys don't learn to hunt, if boys didn't learn to hunt, then your tribes would starve.
Yeah.
And if girls weren't shown how to make moccasins, right, then we wouldn't have those shoes to
go
go
out
hunt,
and go hunt,
to go out and go hunt, right?
Yeah.
Which says that, hey, these kids are an important part of the community. They're an important part of the body of whether it's your family or a community, and developing that within our kids, that they feel as though that what they're doing holds a lot of weight for others seems to be huge.
They have to find their thing. They have to find their path. Everybody's got a puzzle piece to contribute, but the key is trying to find out what yours looks like. And it can change over a lifetime. It morphs into other things and as you go, but it's to be engaged with something that you feel is worthy of your time, energy, and effort. And when you have that, that's where the motivation rises. We get fired up about the work that we're doing, about what we're involved in, the activity we're pursuing. But being able to find that is, that's the difference between just going through the motions and black and white monotone, off to another day in the salt mines, or a 3D rocket ride, full color surround sound, where we feel fully engaged and we feel fully alive. And that's one of the things that, that's always the hope for youth, is to be able to find that. I mean, because you don't find that, and then you turn into some of the adults that we see that are, just in that place, always, complain about what's not going right. They feel stuck. We wouldn't wish that on anybody, but that process starts when they're young, is being able to find what you're good at, what you're passionate about, where your natural talents and abilities. What do you want to do in this world? What gets you excited? When you start asking it from different angles like that, it helps them to find that. And when I was growing up, I got exposed to a lot of different things. I mean, I entered the science fair. I joined clubs. I was joined sports teams. I took field trips. I did things that kind of opened doors so that I could find that thing that was my own. And like I said, it can change over time, but you never know what, the letter F is going to look like in the alphabet until you go through A, B, C, D, and E.
Right.
So we got to just keep trying and keep moving forward and finding that next thing.
Yeah. So I just wanted to do a little bit of a recap, because I think sometimes, when we go through this, we kind of lose sight of what we're talking about, but we're talking about developing that warrior spirit, within which encompasses all those things that you just talked about today, and gave us a good insight on things we can focus on with our kids, and in raising them into these warriors, people who can serve others in the capacity in that they were created in.
That's it. That they become contributors. They create a positive impact in this world, and they know that at the end of the day, it's not about just them. It's about who they affect. That's our ultimate. Service is our highest calling. It's our deepest need, and in the end, it's the thing that outlives us. And when we can develop that for our kids, they live a lifetime of not ease. Not everything's going to work out, but they live a lifetime of significance. They live a life of fulfillment. And sometimes that happens even when we're struggling. But all that, encompassing that to develop that warrior spirit, so that we have resiliency, we have grit, we're surrounding ourselves with the right people, we're practicing the right things, we have the right mentality, the right mindset, that we're doing the things on a daily basis that create and sustain discipline, that we transition later in life to where we're not just the mover and shaker, but we're the hander down. I just made that term up, of knowledge and experience and wisdom to the people who are coming up behind us. So that cycle of moving more into a more positive, better direction, improving things, continues. That it doesn't get lost when we draw our last breath, which we're all going to. It's what trail are you going to leave behind? Because that's ultimately, that's our legacy. Once we draw our last breath, that's how it will be remembered, or not.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought that up. My last question was going to be, what kind of legacy are you wanting to leave? And, you just said it, right? This is it.
Yeah. I want to impact as many people as I possibly can while I have breath in my lungs and blood in my veins. I know, I feel at a core level what I was put here to do. And I'm trying every day to do my best to honor that. And so I continue walking that path. Sometimes I'm running, sometimes I'm crawling inch by inch, but at least I know what it looks like. And, I'm trying to do the best I can to live my purpose. And this is the most, and I feel blessed to be on the path that I'm on. It's not always easy. Sacrifices, are made, have been made. There's ups and downs in the journey. But at the end of the day, when you can lay your head on the pillow at night and know that you're at least doing what you feel God put you here to do, all those challenges become surmountable. All the setbacks become just a pause in the journey, not a roadblock. And we figure out how to keep moving forward.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be writing books, flying planes, reaching millions of people. It could be fueling a C-17, right? And doing it well.
You got it. Just like the story in the book, that young hotshot who, fueling up an aircraft would not seem like glorious work, but you wouldn't know it talking to this kid. He was passionate. He understood the purpose of what he was doing, why the importance of these aircraft going into, these, regions of conflict to bring our men and women back home, bring them care packages, ammunition, fuel, medicine, all these things that they need. He had purpose, and we can do that. The purpose that we find in the work that we do is what we define. It's not what our supervisor tells us it is. It's not the poster of our mission and vision statement for our corporation, our team, our branch of military, whatever we're doing in life. It's the meaning we give the thing. And when we give that thing meaning, anything that we do is going to be, it can be fulfilling, and anything that we do is going to be better.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for delving into your warrior spirit and bringing that to us. It surely has been a blessing to be with you, to read your words, but also to hear your voice today. And thank you so much for doing this. It means a lot.
Chimigwechniji. Thank you very much, my friend, for having me on. I appreciate the time, and keep up the great work that you're doing, Marty.
Yeah, thank you. You too, sir.
Will do.